And the Daily Beast is reporting that the White House has secretly suspended military economic aid to Egypt, a sign the Obama administration is, at least internally, treating the government takeover as a military coup. U.S. officials aren't commenting on the report, saying the review of aid to Egypt is, quote, ongoing. But it should be pointed out that Saudi Arabia has said it would fill the void of any foreign aid that is cut. Meanwhile, Hosni Mubarak has been cleared by an Egyptian court and is to be released from jail. Authorities are now working to determine the official date for the former president to be set free.
Wow.
Let's go to Ayman Moldeen and then get response from the table. Ayman, what's the latest, and how are tensions in the street? Do you fear we may have some more clashes, or is that past for now?
Well, right now the street violence seems to have subsided, at least in Cairo. It seems right now the biggest discussion in Egypt has to deal with the northern Sinai Peninsula there. Yesterday, as we were talking about, 25 soldiers killed, but also all eyes are on a court decision that is expected tomorrow on the possible release of former President Hosni Mubarak. As we understand it, there is a hearing tomorrow. That hearing will surround the decision as to whether or not he should be freed pending the beginning of his trial. He's not acquitted of any wrongdoing, but the judge believes that he has already served 2.5 years waiting for this trial to start, that he does not necessarily have to remain in prison. And that would certainly fuel the flames here, because a lot of people have been making the accusation that what we've seen in the past 7 weeks with the way the military has been running things is that it's a return to the pre-Mubarak days. The military is back in power. A lot of the governors they've appointed are former military officers, former police officers. The release of President Mubarak would just be an example of how corrupted judiciary is here, and more importantly, how the government has just fallen on deaf ears on the demands of the revolution. So it's certainly something we're going to be watching very closely and could fuel the flames of more protests in the days to come.
All right, Ayman, thank you so much. As always, we really do appreciate it. Jeffrey Sachs, the situation in Egypt, just absolutely horrible. It seems like this country has mismanaged it, well, actually for years now.
Well, the whole region is in growing chaos. We have no foreign policy also that is doing anything to help guide the region. And Egypt is a huge country of great importance and completely in civil conflict right now.
What have we done wrong in Egypt? I mean, where do you start? But
there was a move towards democracy that we should have helped. We had misgivings about it. The neighbors had misgivings about it, because when you open up for democracy, they got the first several votes were for Islamist parliament and Islamist president.
Right.
And we could have helped that process to find a middle ground. We did not do so. For 2 years, when they needed some kind of financial stability, we held back on everything. Finally, the generals got organized, I suspect, with a lot of connivance of a lot of our allies and perhaps ourselves. We don't really know the story. And a very brutal coup and crackdown has ensued. And the thought is that you can repress half the country. And we know that that is not going to go anywhere in the long term. It's both brutal in the short term. 1,000 people or more killed. The crackdowns will continue. We have continued to give aid until this point. Whether secretly they've cut off something, we don't know. Our allies, quote unquote, Israel, Saudi Arabia, are all saying, go for it, smash the Muslim Brotherhood. But this is half the country. And it's a crazy idea that this can be put down by massacres and by military brutality, in my view. So we've drifted. And the Obama administration has not shown any clear capacity to help guide events. And then we're told every day in the news we have no say, we don't have any responsibility. We provide the military security for every one of those countries we're talking about right now. For Israel, for Saudi Arabia.
Then why does the president say he doesn't have any say? Why does the president say that his options are limited?
I think it's a lack of capacity and a lack of decision of what to do. The general problem, in my view, is that they're conflicted. Should we really aim for democratization? Well, probably not. It's an Islamist regime, and you see all through this country, of course, a very strong feeling. Don't support anything that has that that flavor to it, that coloration to it.
Right.
It's a huge mistake because we want shortcuts. We want the government we want. So, okay, let the military crack down. But we know this is not the end of the story. This is just more crisis that's going to come.
And of course, before Gene, the military crackdown, the country was actually turned against the Muslim Brotherhood. And, now you've got the Muslim Brotherhood hating the United States, and
everybody hates the U.S.
You've got the military supporters hating the United States. We have charted this weak, waffling middle ground, and it has all sides hating us now in Egypt.
That's correct. we do seem to have managed to make all sides hate us. And look, this is probably going to get a lot worse before it gets better, actually, because I suspect that in the short term, the coup will succeed. What the military is doing now is kind of decapitating the Muslim Brotherhood. They're arresting the leaders. The spiritual leader of the Muslim Brotherhood was arrested yesterday, and the political leaders who had bought into the idea of elections and democracy, they're all detained, including Morsi, before the deposed president. And so what will happen? That may repress the Muslim Brotherhood, the organization, for a while, but a new leadership will inevitably bubble up. It is, as Jeff said, half the country, and the new leadership is unlikely to be as willing to buy into the idea of elections and peaceful transitions as the old leadership was. And they'll say that didn't work.
Yeah, Dr. Brzezinski was on the show saying, we need to pick a side. You need to pick the winning side, but we need to pick a side. And we can't keep waffling back and forth. We are either going to support the generals and say we're going to support you, but these are the conditions that are attached. And this is what you're going to have to do. And you're going to have to release Morsi. And you're going to have to stop acting like a bunch of thugs, but we will support you. All right, we're on your side. Now let's clean this mess up. Or we've got to support the Muslim Brotherhood and the people out in the street.
Or a process. We have to support the idea of democracy.
The idea of the democratic process that led to the election of the Muslim Brotherhood. But we have to choose a side. Yeah. This president loves to say Morsi must, our president loves to say Mubarak must go. And then, well, we'll see if he goes or not. And then it was Assad must go. Okay. I mean, once you say Assad must go and you're the United States president, Assad must go.
Or don't say it.
Or keep your mouth shut. If you say Mubarak must go, you better have looked down the road. Because right now, as much as I've been offended through the years, and I've talked about it through the years, that one of our best allies in the Middle East tortures dissidents, would be a hell of a lot better off right now if the president just kept his mouth shut on Mubarak. And tried to lean in and pressure Mubarak to make changes instead of having the military group that we have now in a situation completely out of control and 100% of Egyptians hating us.
Well, Gaddafi's gone, and we know that what the Arab Spring brought us is the ignition of this spark of democracy, and we're watching this unfold. It is a matter of trying to figure out, are we into foreign nation building as a country? And we know how well that's done for certain presidents in the past. Right. Congressman Jackie Spear was on my show yesterday talking about there's $500 million already allocated and gone to Egypt of the $1.6 billion that's going there. So do we cut off that financial leverage? And as you point out, Saudi Arabia is ready to fill that void. Yeah. So the minute that we step out financially, there's going to be another person with a financial interest to take over.
You bring up Gaddafi, that's great. Boy, I don't understand our foreign policy. And I don't think anybody inside the White House understands our foreign policy.
Or around the world.
Or around the world. There is not a consistent foreign policy. It is ad hoc. We do one thing with Gaddafi, which is a situation was every bit as chaotic as we saw even in the aftermath in Benghazi. We do another on Syria, where now how many, Jeffrey Sachs? Over 100,000 people have been killed?
Complete
chaos. There's a fund.
Gene?
I was just going to say, I think there is one fundamental question that we really haven't answered. I'm not sure that we could have saved Mubarak if we had wanted to tell you the truth. Right. Because remember, the whole country wanted to get rid of him instead of just half the country. Right. So I think he was a goner. But the fundamental question is, okay, are we willing to accept and support and nurture Islamist-led governments
that
arise after the Arab Spring or not? Those elected governments that that come up, are we going to be patient and try to transform them or help them transform into truly representative democracies that are not Afghanistan, that are not Taliban sort of regimes, or not? Or do you think that can't happen?
Here's the question. I mean, the question is, and I guess this is for the history books, what could we have done to make Morsi a more rational, reasonable leader that didn't suspend, the courts, and that didn't.
Joe, actually, it wasn't actually like that, because what happened was there was a parliamentary election, and the Islamists won a large majority, and then it was the courts, who are the Mubarak-era appointees, that overturned the parliamentary election. That was the starting point of all of this downward spiral. We said nothing.
Well, I mean, are you saying that Morsi was without fault? That Morsi,
I didn't say not without fault.
That Morsi didn't push things to the extreme?
What happened was that Parliament, which could have actually sat as a normal government, was suspended by the Mubarak-era courts, and that blocked the democratization process. At that moment, we said nothing. Right. And this was the generals and the Mubarak folks coming back in. And it's been 1 year since then of downward spiral. That's when it started, actually. It started when the elected parliament of Islamist majority wasn't allowed to sit. Okay. And after that, basically, this was a whole rolling coup. And now they've done it. And the U.S. has been on the sidelines saying, we're not sure. We kind of like democracy a little bit, but go ahead and crush it.
Okay, we'll be back. I'm sure we'll be talking about this a good bit more throughout the hour. Alex is screaming at me. It's time to go to break 10 minutes ago. Coming up on Morning Joe, we've got the editor of the Weekly Standard, Bill Kristol. It'll be interesting what he has to say about this. Also, Chris Matthews and comedian Louis Black. And up next, Virginia Governor Bob McDonnell's reputation's taken a nosedive after it was revealed he took gifts while in office. But could jail time be in his future? Just unbelievable. That story is in the Politico Playbook next. But first, here's Bill Cairns. He's got a look on the forecast. Bill.
Hey, good morning, Joe. And I have some, there's not a lot of weather news today, so I got some numbers to throw at you. I took a look at the state of our climate year to date. We've got some kind of shocking things going on. We haven't had a lot of big weather disasters around this country. We're at a near record low pace of tornadoes. Of course, we had the horrible Moore, Oklahoma tornado, but year to date, we should be about 1,200. We're only at 716, so we're about 500 behind on where we should be. Also, in the last 2 years, in 2012 and 2014, we had $25 billion weather disasters in this country. So far, that Moore, Oklahoma, we've only had $1 billion weather disasters. So that's great news. I mean, but we were on this incredible pace of billion-dollar weather disasters, and now all of a sudden we're off it. And then finally, the hurricane season is off to a slow start. Typically, the first hurricane forms August 10th. It's still a little early to say what's going to happen through September. That is our peak month. As far as the forecast today, I mentioned it. It's a very typical summer day. There's not many weather concerns out there. Flying Atlanta and in Florida, maybe some afternoon storms, and that's about it. You're watching Morning Joe, brewed by Starbucks.